Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin or on the Dynasty After Dark YouTube and Rumble channels. Thank you guys for tuning in, and if you missed it last week, I broke down every single one of the positional players with the three riskiest players for 2022 and beyond. There were a couple more difficult players like Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, but then a few slam dunk easy picks like Deshaun Watson at quarterback. So please be sure to go listen to those. And these are all players that are going inside the top 12 in current ADP based on May ADP from Dynasty League Football. So these might not be currently up to date, but this is the best we have because the month of June is still going on, obviously, and we don't have full data for that month. So based on May, what I wanted to do was last week break down the three riskiest players inside the top 12, but today we want to go through three players that I think could jump into the top 12 for 2022 and beyond. And these are all players going outside of the top 12 in ADP currently. So today we're going to start with the quarterback position, and obviously the number one guy that is being talked about right now, probably one of the most controversial picks right now in Dynasty football, is Trey Lance with the San Francisco 49ers. So if you follow any sort of fantasy Twitter, he's just been the talk of the town, whether you're for him or against him. But let me break down my reasoning why I think Trey Lance can finish inside the top 12 and why you should be excited for him. So you can see here, Trey Lance, he is only 22 years old. He's currently his ADP is QB 13 based on the May ADP. And you're saying, wow, that's not that big of a jump for him to go up one spot to the top 12. And that's not why I'm excited about Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has the possibility to finish inside the top 6 quarterbacks in 2022, and he's going to be able to build on that going forward. So first off, let me lay out the negatives for Trey Lance. The negatives that you're going to be hearing all offseason are, one, they still have Jimmy Garoppolo. So he's never going to be the quarterback because they still have Jimmy Garoppolo. Counterpoint, you don't give up 3 first-round picks to go get a guy at number 3 overall last year to let him sit for multiple seasons. It's just not going to happen. This isn't the Brett Favre era where they get Aaron Rodgers and they're just going to let him sit. Also, Aaron Rodgers wasn't the number 3 overall pick in that year's draft class. He fell down the boards a little bit there. So, first off, that's just not a viable strategy if Kyle Shanahan and the GM want to keep their job going forward. So that's not going to matter to me whatsoever. Number 2, he wasn't that accurate. Last year, he kind of airmailed a few balls and he threw it with a little bit too much power, things like that. And that's fine. He was a very raw candidate. And this is the third thing you're going to hear quite a bit. He doesn't have a lot of play time, which is, again, fine. These guys are going to develop. He needs time in the system and play time on the field to get better. So Trey Lance is going to get better for these 3 reasons right here. Number 1, he's very, very athletic, extremely athletic. Everyone kind of argues between him and Justin Fields of last year's draft class, which was the better quarterback, just pure athletically. And you can make the argument for Justin Fields because we have tangible numbers on his 40 time. Trey Lance didn't run the 40, but there are reports that he routinely ran about a 4.5, mid 4.5s in the 40-yard dash, which Justin Fields, I think, beat him in the 40-yard dash, but Justin Fields is smaller and he's not as stocky as Trey Lance. Trey Lance is a big dude. He's also got a howitzer for an arm. That's reason number 2 why I'm very excited for Trey Lance. Yes, he throws with a little bit too much velocity sometimes. He needs to learn to kind of ease up on the gas pedal a little bit on some of his throws. It'll definitely help his accuracy if he doesn't put so much into every single pass. But it would not shock me if he could throw a 70, 75-yard pass with ease. His arm rivals Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen as some of the best arms in the league currently. And reason number 3 why I'm so excited for Trey Lance going forward, he's a rushing threat on the ground because of his athleticism that I just talked about, and he's with Kyle Shanahan, probably one of the best offensive minds in the NFL currently. Although I have my issues with Kyle Shanahan, you cannot deny The dude knows what he's doing when it comes to creating an offense. And Trey Lance, good or bad, will thrive for fantasy football because Kyle Shanahan is going to put him in many very good situations for fantasy. They're going to isolate him in the running game and create some running plays for him in that regard. And then they're going to be able to dial up easy passes to get him going in the passing game. You got the weapons around him that are very, very good. You've got George Kittle, who's a top 3 tight end currently for Dynasty in most people's book. You got Brandon Ayuk, who I still really like. You got Deebo Samuel. You got Elijah Mitchell. You got Jeff Wilson. There's a lot of talented weapons on this offense. Now, you look at what he did last year, and this is what everyone likes to point out, right? He only played 2.5 games basically for the entire year. The games that Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, missed to injury or COVID or what exactly it was, I don't remember. But in the one game, he played 51% of snaps, 9 for 18, through the air for 157 and 2 touchdowns in that game. He had 7 for 41 on the ground and then a sack, whatever, that's fine. In the second game, his first actual start, 29 attempts, 15 completions for 192 and a pick, right? Not great against Arizona, but he had 16 carries for 89 yards on the ground. No touchdowns in either one of these. He had no rushing touchdowns except for his one carry against Green Bay in week 3 last year. That is not going to be the story going forward. If Kyle Shanahan makes him a focal point in the running game, like I think he will, there's going to be no world where Trey Lance doesn't finish with at least 6, 7, 8 touchdowns on the ground. Then his third game that he started last year was against Houston in week 17. 16 of 23 through the air. Again, not the best through the air, but he was a rookie. 249 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. So if you're counting it up there, through 2.5 games, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Not bad, not terrible. Definitely could use a little bit of improvement, but not bad. On the ground, he had about 33 carries in 2.5 games. Average that out to 11 carries a game. Fine, that's great. And about 150 yards. That's also great. You average that out to about 60, 70 yards on the ground. That's such a high floor for fantasy football. And again, he had no rushing touchdowns in those 2.5 games that he started last year, and that's only going to go up. So I am all aboard the Trey Lance hype train, and probably you could call me the conductor because I have him everywhere. I bought him in every single league, and I think you should too. Now, number 2 quarterback here we're going to go over is Kirk Cousins, and you're saying, Kirk Cousins, why? How in the world is he going to finish his top 12? Well, let me tell you something. Kirk Cousins, over the last few years, here's his end of season finishes. So in 2015, this is when he actually became a starter for the Washington Redskins at the time, but now the Washington Commanders, finished as the QB 10. 2016, QB 5. 2017, QB 6. 2018, first year with Minnesota, QB 13. 2019, QB 19. All right, 2020, number 11. 2021, number 11. Kirk Cousins is perennially underrated as a quarterback. One of the best things that Kirk Cousins has going for him is he does not get injured, like ever. He is consistently on the field. Now, the problem with Kirk Cousins is he kills you from a consistency standpoint week to week. The last couple of years, though, 2021 and 2020, it's been much better. The addition of Justin Jefferson has really turned him around, where it's made him a lot less streaky. But man, if you go back to the last couple years, he really hasn't had too many down games that he's really hurt you from a fantasy perspective. 2019, he started the first 4 games kind of killing you, but he went on a tear for the rest of the season with only 2 down games for the rest of that year. 2020, he had a negative game in week 2. it seems like the consistent theme with Kirk Cousins is, looking back at his scoring logs on Sleeper for the first half of the season, he kind of struggles a little bit getting out of the gate, but then he hits the ground running mid-season and just continues that through the end of the year. Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback, and the fact that over the last few years he's had basically 4,000 yards through the air guaranteed and 30-plus touchdowns almost guaranteed every single year. Doesn't have a ton of interceptions, a little bit higher than what you want to see, but he does not hurt you in that aspect. Now, he doesn't really do much on the ground, but he does enough to do a little bit of work there, but it's not great. He did a lot more with Washington than he has with Minnesota, but I'd like to see what he can do with the new coaching staff this year. Now, you look at the reasons to be optimistic about Kirk Cousins. In 2021, he finished his quarterback 11. 2020, quarterback 11. This is with one of the most boring passing offenses in the NFL with Mike Zimmer. That is not the case anymore. They have a new head coach who comes over from the Sean McVay tree, which Kirk Cousins was with in Washington. And when he really thrived, he was with a West Coast system, and that's what he's thrived with his whole career. They are going to instill that in 2022, and I would not be shocked if Kirk Cousins throws for 5,000, maybe 5,300 yards this season. It's definitely possible. They're not going to try and run the ball nearly as much as what they did under Mike Zimmer the last couple of years. So the fact that Kirk Cousins is going as QB 20 right now off the board, I get it. There's a lot of youth to be excited about, but he has consistently finished very well for fantasy football, especially over the last few years, and a lot better when he was with Washington a few years ago with the system that he's now going to have in 2022 and beyond. Now, the third guy here is Mr. W Burger, Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, QB 23 in the May ADP. He's 28 years old, and he is the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. Now, Jameis is an interesting prospect, and it's tough to realistically value Jameis Winston right now. But all I know is the New Orleans Saints, they have some changes made this offseason. Sean Payton retires. They move on from a few of their defensive players, and every single year they're moving on from some star players because they're constantly in cap troubles and are constantly up against it every single year, but they always maneuver and find a way to make it work. But Jameis Winston is someone that they just signed to a 2-year contract and this offseason. So they are committed to Jameis Winston. I think of all the guys that got 2-year contracts, Marcus Mariota, Mitch Trubisky, Jameis Winston, all those guys, he got the best contract for a starting quarterback. They really paid him quite handsomely to be their quarterback for the future, at least for the next couple of years. Now, you look at the Saints, they just gave up everything in the 2021 draft to go, or 2022 draft, to go get Chris Olave and the new left tackle Trevor Penning, if I remember right. They have no first round picks in 2022 or 2023. So realistically, they're not going to even be looking for a quarterback until 2024. Jameis Winston is locked and loaded for 2022 and 2023 as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, who are almost always competitive from a fantasy perspective. Now, you look at the weapons that he has, and in 2021, he played 7 games. It was a little bit kind of hit or miss for fantasy. You know, week 1 against Green Bay, goes out there, throws for 5 touchdowns. Week 2 was a dud. Week 3 and week 4 were okay performances, not great. Week 5 against Washington, goes out there, throws up another 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. And this was with nobodies in the passing game. His weapons last year were terrible. But looking at his weapons this year, he should have Michael Thomas back. Jury's still out. I get that. I'm not saying anything about that. But Jarvis Landry is his wide receiver too. Definite upgrade there over Deontay Harris. He's got Traquan Smith still. He's got the rookie Chris Olave. They still have Adam Troutman. They have Alvin Kamara. They've got Mark Ingram. There's a lot of weapons here suddenly in the wide receiver core that should be interesting. Michael Thomas is the biggest one. If he can play, it will be a game changer for Jameis Winston. Now, Jameis, again, I get it. He's a little bit of a meme, but you go back to the last year that he was a full-time starter, which was 2019 with Tampa Bay. Quarterback 4 that year, and that's the infamous 30 for 30 year for Jameis Winston. 5,100 yards, 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. Jameis has always been a little bit of a threat on the ground. He even did a little bit last year. Yardage-wise, he always gets something, but the downsides for Jameis Winston going into 2022, one, he's coming off an ACL tear. That's not great, but for a quarterback, it's a little less risky than some of the other injuries that they can sustain. So he should be able to get back and be able to perform just fine. The other risks are, if there is no Michael Thomas, you're looking at a rookie Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry, who's not in the prime of his career anymore as his starting wide receivers. You can make the argument that it's not a great receiving core still, and I get that, but I think there's a lot of potential there, especially with Michael Thomas. Number 3, they don't have Sean Payton, who was one of the best offensive minds in the NFL for a long period of time. So there's an argument that Jameis could definitely be a little bit of a risk this year, but I am not too worried because I think that they're going to be able to continue with their new offensive coordinator. He was the right-hand man basically under Sean Payton. He helped game plan with him. So they're going to be able to keep the same schemes, at least, that what they did in years past. The weapons are definitely upgraded. You can't argue against that. They are upgraded. Now, just how much they're upgraded is the question. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity. They have a good schedule this year. In 2022, we don't know exactly who they're playing, but or at least the order. We know what teams they're going to be playing. But anytime you play the Carolina Panthers twice, I know their defense is a lot better, but you're going to be able to put up some points still. I don't think it's a shutdown defense whatsoever. You got the Falcons, who are a joke, twice. And then you got some other teams in the NFC, not the best defenses over there. It's definitely looking good for the Saints to go out there and definitely try and make a playoff push this year. So I expect a lot from Jameis Winston, and at quarterback 23, it's free money. And if he finishes with the potential that he has around quarterback 12, it's just a massive steal at that ADP. So Jameis Winston is the number 3 guy that I had here for the quarterback position. Thank you guys for listening. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the video like I mentioned before. I appreciate you guys listening. Follow me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on the video or on Twitter, and I'd be happy to help you guys answer anything you got. So thank you again, and good night.